there's two switches that you must flip in life to become successful. And the first is the intensity switch, and the second is the consistency switch. So a lot of the times people are trying to flip that consistency switch before they've earned the right to, and they haven't earned it through the intensity that's required. And so they're thinking, how do I make this scalable? How do I do this? It's like, no, like raw steel sex appeal. Like you have to go a million miles an hour in the very beginning. It's the rocky cutscene that you can't avoid. Like that is truly where between 9 to 5 is where you make a living, between 5 to 9 is where you make a life. I can't point to a single entrepreneur that did not live that existence in the very beginning, right? So the intensity switch is I will do what's required. I'm not going to do my best. I'm going to do what's required, right? But then eventually once you have some track record of success and now the plane is kind of taken off of the runway a little bit and now you have some momentum, that's where you flip to the consistency switch to where now what got you here isn't going to take you there. And the consistency switch is leverage. So this is where now you have a little bit of profit, you have a little bit of margin, and you start hiring out people and processes and use those profits to yield both of those things.
Nobody's born incredible. People who do incredible things simply took the right steps. This is our journey. This is the hunt for incredible. All right, let's kick it off. Okay, so this episode is a special episode. Ryan and I are going to ping pong back and forth and go over the best advice that we've ever received. So hopefully you can apply it to your own lives. And I'm stoked to hear your lessons too. So we can ping back and forth and kick it off right.
Yeah, man, this is going to be super fun because I mean, you and I both have access to kind of the best and brightest entrepreneurs, business owners, investors across kind of all asset classes and areas. And so especially like even on my show, over 800 episodes deep now, we've gotten some really good feedback and good pieces of advice and some quotables that have really changed how I think about things and how I think about the world, how I think about investing, how I think about happiness overall, stuff like that. So I'm excited to dive in with you today. And then hopefully for people listening, pay attention throughout the entirety of the show, the entirety of this episode, because there may be one thing or two things that you guys pull out of this that completely changes everything for you. It could be at minute 7, it could be 20 seconds from now, it could be 40 minutes from now. Who knows?
Yeah, 100%. Not only that,
or maybe we suck.
Dude, well,
maybe we're awful.
Dude, but not only that, but there are so many lessons learned and pieces of advice that we've gotten that are so contrarian, but they make all of the difference because even if you are trying to climb up in the world and build something meaningful and significant, the people who have built those significant things are so few and far between that 98% of the advice that we get in life is from people who we don't want to be like at all anyway. Mm-hmm. And so half of the battle is just filtering out the bullshit and trying to figure out, okay, what advice do I receive? What advice do I reject? And oftentimes it's the contrarian. Actually, I'd even say every single time it's the contrarian advice that really pushes things forward because that's the stuff that you didn't realize. Because if you had realized it, then you wouldn't be where you are today anyway.
Yeah, so let's talk about that because Jeff Bezos has this really interesting story that he put out in a shareholder letter years and years and years ago. And he talks about how nature calls you back to itself. So for instance, it's like whatever your environment is, it'll try to absorb you. So like when we die, we're absorbed back into like the soil, the dirt, the earth, like the environment pulls us back. So it takes a lot of effort and it takes a lot of active energy to be different than your environment. Think about it. Because as soon as you stop giving effort, you're dead. And now you're back into the environment. So the more different that you want to be than your environment, the more effort it's going to take. And the more people and more resources are going to try to pull you back to kind of the status quo. So his point in saying that is that the larger life that you want to live and the higher impact that you want to have, the more people and the more things are going to pull at you to kind of bring you back down to status quo.
100%. And then in addition to that, given that you are so readily influenced by your environment, shifting your environment is one of the best ways to actually change how you operate. So we talk about this all the time. Actually, one of your posts that went viral on our last
minivan,
the minivan theory, which effectively, like, if you want to be in a different place in life, the quickest way is to actually shift your environment and put yourself in rooms where people are actually operating differently and have the things that you have. Because the only reason why you don't have what you want is because you are not the person who can receive those things. So it's not a matter of you operating differently in your environment to get those things. It's a matter of you becoming a different person. And part of that is being in a different environment to get those things.
Let's talk about the process of becoming.
Okay.
I love this idea. So there's this idea that has really helped me recently, which is God's delays are not God's denials. And so we have this laundry list of things that we think that we deserve, but we don't realize that we're not yet ready for. And so just because you're delayed in your journey does not mean that that thing is denied to you. A lot of the times there's a lot of work that needs to be done that you're refusing to do. And everybody that's listening to this and watching this is aware of it, because the lessons keep hitting you over the head over and over and over again until you listen to them and you learn them and you integrate them. And once you do, then all of a sudden the thing unlocks. And so that's something that I've been working on right now is, instead of trying to, perfection is not something that we can ever reach, but it's something that we can strive towards. Like we can strive towards a better ideal. We can strive towards a better person, a better version of us that we're becoming. And I really like that idea. I don't know.
Yeah. And to tie it into the identity elements, I think that's where all the real leverage is, and to give a concrete example, there's a stark difference in outcome from somebody who is a heavy smoker who says, I am trying to stop smoking, versus somebody who shifts their identity to say, I am not a smoker.
Dude, try is a cuss word. Try is a swear word.
Yeah.
Try is the worst word in the human language, in any language, and in the English language. If you say you try, you're immediately saying that you're giving yourself 50% permission to fail. There is no try. There's only do. Anytime somebody says oh, I want to try to invest in real estate, I want to try to become financially free, I'm like, all right, you're already out. You've already lost because you've given yourself the option of failure. What's been your experience with this?
Yeah. So to tie this into some of the best advice I've ever received, it was don't try to do the things that successful people do. Don't try, become the person that the successful people are, right?
Mm-hmm.
So every day, rather than saying oh, I'm going to try to work out to get into shape, you wake up every single day, you look yourself in the mirror and you say, I work out every single day. I do hard things. I take cold showers when I don't want to. I don't eat the fucking Doritos because that's not in my diet, right? So whenever I do a new diet, because I'm pretty obsessive. We talked about this, longevity, feeling good. I'm trying to be obsessive. I am obsessively dialed about that stuff. It's whenever I am adjusting my diet to do carnivore, animal-based, whatever it is, I tell people when they offer me something that I don't want to eat, I don't tell them, oh, I'm trying not to eat that. I say, I don't eat those things. And it's crazy the shift that happens when you shift who you are on a fundamental and identity level. And even the documentary Sprint is phenomenal for this. Anybody who hasn't seen it, you have to watch Sprint. Listening to how those high-performing athletes talk to themselves, it's like they program themselves on an identity level to say, I am the fastest human alive. I'm going to win because I'm the fastest human alive. Nobody works harder than I do. They don't say oh, I'm trying to fit 8 hours of working out in today. No, it's I am the most obsessive worker alive, and that is why I am the fastest human alive. And it's this fundamental identity level that ends up creating an outcome that is this successful person, this high performer.
So let's talk about the difference between being and becoming, because I think what you said there was really important. So everybody says, I want to become a millionaire. Why don't you just be a millionaire?
Yeah.
Right? So somebody hears that and they're like, wait, but I don't have $1 million in my bank account. Yes, you don't yet, but take a millionaire. Who is a millionaire outside of the bank account? What are they doing? How are they moving? How are they speaking? Where are they hanging out? What actions are they doing every single week? You take the actions that the millionaire does, you do the same actions, and you become that person. Now, the only discrepancy between you and your end result in the bank account financially is time. So that's where all of my confidence comes from, is because I do the same things that 8-figure people do and that 9-figure people do. And so I'm like, okay, cool. By the time I get to $100 million in net worth, it's going to be something that I don't care about at all because I have been that person for the last 2 decades.
Dude, 100%. Before my first million, I used to tell myself I'm a millionaire. They just haven't paid me yet. And it was like,
yeah,
how
yeah,
do I
yeah,
operate? I operate as if I already have
yeah.
$1 million. And then now it is transitioning to I'm worth $100 million.
And that's
They just
free.
haven't paid me yet.
That's
Yeah.
free. And so when we're talking about the idea that I say is immersion yields conversion. So when we're talking about masterminds, we're talking about coaches and all of this stuff. The only reason that access matters, I don't know about you, but there's not been like that many, many millionaires that I've hung out with that have given me like the secret sauce. I just look at what they do, and because I have access to them and I'm just with them, it's like osmosis.
Yeah.
So you learn through just being around them, and you see how they operate. And then you also see that they're not like this hyper intelligent, hyper privileged, hyper insane person. They're not an extraordinary person. And that's where I learned this really cool idea that extraordinary is just ordinary. Like, so to be extraordinary, you just need to do the ordinary extra.
Yeah.
And so these millionaires are just ordinary people that just do ordinary things extra. And they don't care if they don't feel good. They don't care if it's raining. They're going to go for the run. They're going to analyze the deals. They're going to do what needs to be done consistently over a long period of time. And then that's how they become who they're meant to become. It's insane. I freaking love that.
Yeah. And a fun exercise that I encourage everybody listening to do. I did this and it blew my mind, is list out the 10 people you surround yourself with on average that you submerge yourself around, and list out what you project their net worth is, and do that over a period of time. I did it over the last 3 to 5 years of my life, and I listed out the 10 people I hung out with, what their net worth was, and then over those 5 years leading to today, the different groups that I surrounded myself with. And the mind-blowing thing about this experiment is you will find that you will land nearly every time dead center of that net worth.
Or on the lower end.
Or on the lower end. And when I mapped it out, literally within a couple month period of shifting who I surrounded myself with, my net worth changed dramatically based on the average net worth of the people I surrounded myself with. It's pretty mind blowing, because when I heard this, I was like, okay, yeah, maybe I'm going to list it out and see if it actually lands. And it was literally like 3 to 6 months after I shifted who I surrounded myself with is when my bank account started reflecting that.
After interviewing, I think 800 some odd millionaires now, environment's the one thing that's just the common thread. It's environment and it's vision, period. Like, that's it. So they have a crystal clear idea about where they're going and why. So that directional clarity. They have an idea of the sequential clarity, which is how fast. And then the tactical clarity yields itself after directional and sequential are answered. And then that's how they're able to actually create their tactical game plan and pick their asset class and pick their selections. That's how.
Yeah. Yeah. And not only that, but it's the environment that helps clarify that vision and everything. Because you're talking to people who have done the thing before and they say, no, this is how you want to do it. This is how you want to structure it, etc. So for anybody listening who says like, oh, I need to figure out my vision before I figure out the group. No, it's the opposite. You change your environment, you submerge yourself in environments where people are doing things, and then that helps you refine it.
I think I'd push on that.
Okay.
I think you start with the vision first, because then that's what helps you dictate the environment. So it's like, if you need to know who you want to become instead of just like haphazardly hopping in like different ponds and different environments, right? So like for me, what I was really blessed because I was crystal clear about who I wanted to become before I entered any room with any millionaire. So the millionaires that I first met were all like men that really, really were intentional about their health, their travel, their balance, their families, their faith, stuff like that. I wasn't hanging around like country club Ferrari guys for my first introduction of wealth. And so I was intentional about that vision for who I wanted to become was that person. And because I was that person that I wanted to be, those are the environments that attracted me. That's who I surrounded myself with. And then that's where the process started. So I would be careful there about just like going to an environment. You want to make sure that you're going to an environment that is really aligned with where you want you to be.
Yeah.
Who you want you to become.
Yeah. No, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
I think my experience, it was more like I knew the general direction, but I didn't have real clarity on. I was just like, I want financial freedom. I want to travel around. And it was like so vague. And to have really crystal clear vision, you need to be more articulate than that, I found. And so I discovered that through a lot of conversations with people who I felt had it. But yeah, to your point, 100%. Like you need to know the direction that you're going to know the groups that you need to enter. So 100%, 100%. All right, we've been cruising on this topic. Let's dive into more great pieces of advice. So Brian, what's another best piece of advice that you've received?
I just wrote an entire newsletter on this. I'm trying to think about how I want to phrase it because I spent a lot of time on this morning. Be careful not to kill yourself building a temple that your family doesn't want to live in.
Oh, I really like that.
Yeah. That's a good one. I was writing out about two different ideas. So I want to riff on these two different concepts really quickly, and then I'd like to hear your opinion on them. So the first idea is that there's two switches that you must flip in life to become successful. And the first is the intensity switch, and the second is the consistency switch. So a lot of the times people are trying to flip that consistency switch before they've earned the right to, and they haven't earned it through the intensity that's required. And so they're thinking, how do I make this scalable? How do I do this? It's like, no, like raw steel sex appeal. Like you have to go a million miles an hour in the very beginning. It's the Rocky cutscene that you can't avoid. Like that is truly where between 9 to 5 is where you make a living, between 5 to 9 is where you make a life. I can't point to a single entrepreneur that did not live that existence in the very beginning, right? So the intensity switch is I will do what's required. I'm not going to do my best. I'm going to do what's required, right? But then eventually once you have some track record of success and now the plane is kind of taken off of the runway a little bit and now you have some momentum, that's where you flip to the consistency switch to where now what got you here isn't going to take you there. And the consistency switch is leverage. So this is where now you have a little bit of profit, you have a little bit of margin, and you start hiring out people and processes and use those profits to yield both of those things, right? And so right now, I'm in a process right now of actively doing that, of going from the intensity switch over the last 2.5 years now to the consistency switch, to where the question that I'm asking every single week and every single day now is, what is my highest and best use? What's most fun for me? What do I enjoy more than anything? Like from a perspective of work. And everything else that I don't like doing, everything else that I hate doing, everything else that I'm not that great at, I delegate, elevate, or automate off of my plate and out of my world. So there's this quote that's delegate everything besides genius. Because the point is, you don't burn out because of hard work. You burn out because of the wrong work. And so I wanted to say that to lay the groundwork for the quote that I just said is be careful not to kill yourself building a temple that your family doesn't want to live in. Because what happens is a lot of people that I know and a lot of people that have been on the podcast, multimillionaires, hyper successful men in particular, will go and they will use the excuse of I'm doing this for my family to directly prevent them spending time with their family. And I was a byproduct of this. And so my father, like I was basically raised by a single mother, you know, and so they got divorced at 13. So my dad lived there all the way up until 13, which was insane to think about because I truly do say single mother because my dad worked from 10 to 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. So 60 to 70 hours a week as an air traffic controller. And he just did what he wanted to do. He just was like, I'm going to go work my ass off and hard work equals more money, right? I work more, I make more money. Money was his idol. Money was his God, not his family. And so what he did was he was gone before I woke up for school. And so I never saw him in the mornings. And then in the afternoons, he commuted 90 minutes back from his work. And then he was back home by like 6:30, 7 o'clock at night. And then he would go in the garage and work on his cars. And so I never got to see him then because that's dad's time away from the kids. Because now he's stressed. Now he needs to unwind before bed. And he wakes up and does it all over again. And so I spent my entire life not knowing him, not hanging out with him, even from when I was young. So I had to teach myself how to throw a football and a baseball in middle school. I had to teach myself how to shave. I had to, teach myself how to change a tire with a father who's working on 4 cars in the garage. So that was my existence. So I truly was raised by a single mom, even though my dad was there, which is crazy to think about. And I say all of this to say that there's a lot of entrepreneurs that are financially free. and they're doing the same thing. So they already have like 2,000 units of multifamily apartments, or they have self-storage, or they have these businesses, and they're like, oh yeah, right now I make $2 million a year, but I'm going to make $10 million a year for my family. Or I make 10 million, I'm going to make 20 million for my family. Your family does not care. The only thing that your family cares about is time. So cut the money in half, like instead of spending, like spend half the money, twice the time on your kids and your family, and you will be just fine. So be careful not to kill yourself building a temple that your family doesn't want to live in, because I think that the worst outcome that anybody could have in the wealth building journey is to get everything they've ever wanted and to have it by themselves.
Yeah, I was literally 2 weeks ago talking to somebody worth over $100 million, and we were talking about their strategies and how cool it was that they built what they had built. And he followed it up with like his success story with how he doesn't have a wife and kids, and how now that's all he thinks about, but that ship has sailed. And he said he was always married to his business, so he never wanted to invest the time to marry somebody else.
But don't love something that doesn't love you back.
Right. Yeah.
Your business won't love you back. Your real estate won't love you back. Your bank account won't love you back. Your Bitcoin won't love you back.
Yeah. And the rule that I always often apply, which is another great piece of advice that I've received, is to apply the 60-year rule to any major decision in life, but also to regularly do it.
What's the 60-year rule?
The 60-year rule is whenever you have a major fork in the road, and I've started applying this even to the little things, because I found that like the real beauty in life is applying it to the little things that like seemingly don't matter, is you close your eyes and you imagine that you are 60 years down the road or 40 years down the road, depending on how old you are, and you're reflecting back on your life. What decision do you wish you had made? Because I'm always trying to take care of future Gid. Like every time I park in the parking spot, you notice when I pull up here, I always back into a spot as a reminder to take care of future Gid. So when I hop in that car, I just have to drive away. And I always say like, yo, thanks, past Gid. Freaking got me. And I'm like, yo, I got you, future Gid. You know what I mean? Like I'm always taking care of the future version of myself.
Yeah.
Because as you go through life, and I'll tie this into another amazing piece of advice that I got, is you play the game based on what your scoreboard is. So everybody has a different scoreboard. Some people, it's like, okay, look at the scoreboard. How much money have I made? Some people, their scoreboard is how much time they spent with their kids. Like, how do you measure the success in your life? And your scoreboard will change over time. Like when I was in my early 20s, like building an empire and becoming the richest person in the world, that was like my scoreboard. I was like, that's what's going to matter. I just want to build something cool, grow in like wealth and power, do whatever the hell I want. That is my success. And then as I've gotten older, it's evolved where I realized like, no, relationships are really meaningful. That's why I love podcasting, like hanging out with people like you and sharing our thoughts with the world. So it's like building quality relationships and traveling the world and like being fulfilled through relationships is what matters. So now my scoreboard has shifted, and I'm sure as time goes on, I have a little girl on the way, my first in September.
Dude, by the way, congratulations, dude.
Thank you so much.
Health and vitality is on the scoreboard.
Yeah.
Because you want to be able to play as hard as your kids want to.
100%. 100%.
And if you're burned out and pissed off from your business, what was the point of the business?
Exactly. Like the business should feed you and supply the interests in your life. It should not be the only thing that you care about. But business is also a fun game, right? So it's like, it is a game that I enjoy playing. Like I genuinely love the game of business and the art of trying to make money and impact lives and everything else. But you always have to be mindful that the scoreboard evolves over time. So I spend a significant portion of time with my eyes closed thinking about and fully meditating on what does the 60 to 80-year-old version of me care about? Like what life do I wish I'd built? And to use your words, what temple will I be stoked that I built? And that perspective shifts everything for me and often brings a lot of clarity to the fork in the road, because I want to get to the end of my life living an interesting life and having incredible relationships. And part of that is growing businesses where I can pour capital or resources in other people and leave a better impact on the world than when I showed up. But like in terms of what that looks like, taking care of the future version of me and building the life that the 60-year-old version of me cares about and looking at what scoreboard that's going to look like is what makes all the difference in how I navigate the journey through life.
Hey, I think the takeaway there was the scoreboard. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Scoreboard is a really good one. So it's like, what is on your scoreboard is more important than the score itself.
Yes. Yeah.
What metrics you're tracking on the scoreboard, because I've gotten to a point now where, I mean, for people listening, like time is such an insane idea, right? So it's like from me working from 2019 to 2022, I worked in corporate, right? And then I had like the ceiling of corporate where it was like work harder, make more money, but then eventually you run out of hours in the day, right? So a video that I just did this morning was a man who works all the time has is he who works all the time has no time to make money.
I love that.
He who works all the time has no time to make money. And so that was me in corporate America. You work more, you make more money, but then there's only so many hours in the week, right? And so your income is capped. And so from 2019 to 2022, I went from $67,000 to $250,000 a year. And then I realized at that point, I said, okay, cool, this is awesome, but how do I make $1 million a year? How do I make $2.5 million a year? And there was no answer that existed within corporate that I could do that, period. And I said, okay, cool. So the game that I wanted to play originally I was like, how do I make more money? Right. And in the beginning, it was self-serving. And a lot of people won't make any moves or won't make any changes because they're already good enough and their comfort zone is already fulfilled. Right. And so back then I was making $250,000 a year. I was already good. So the idea of making $1 million I was like, I like the idea of it, but I'm not going to do anything to change it. But then eventually, like I switched and I started, instead of thinking of me, I thought, hold on a second. What about for my future family? What about for my future family? What do they need? Like, I want to have 2 kids. I want to have a wife, 2 kids, a dog or 2. Like, they need me to provide. So I'm thinking about me right now. I got to think about my future family. So everything I do that I forecast for, everyone says, must be nice. You're 30 and single. I'm like, no, everything I budget for today, how I run my budget is for a family of 4. I don't talk about that enough. Like nobody does that. And to circle all the way back down to scoreboards and games, this conversation, there's a game that I play that I really love that I believe I told you about before, which is the make $1 million, net $1 million, give $1 million, serve $1 million. Yeah. So it's like first level of the game is how do you make $1 million a year? Second level of the game is how do you net $1 million a year in profit, take home cash after tax. Third level of the game is how do you pay your top 5 people $1 million a year? So how are other people making millions of dollars a year from being in your economic wake? And then the fourth game is how do you give $1 million away a year personally? So how do you go and give every single year? And so that game was super fun for me because that like you can't win the game. You can just continue playing it. So I like unwinnable games. I like figuring out what games I want to play for the rest of my life. And so that's why I liked your scoreboard analogy so much, because choosing your scoreboard for the rest of your life, I think, is the point of life. If you have no scoreboard, you have no life, because the point of life is to play. I don't think it's to work. I think it's to play. And the people that win the most are the ones where you cannot tell the difference between work and play.
100%. 100%. And on top of that, defining your scoreboard based on your interests. It's so easy.
And it changes.
Yeah. And it's so easy to get distracted by other people's scoreboards, like keeping up with the Joneses. It's literally you're letting your environment dictate your scoreboard and you're living by that scoreboard rather than stopping and saying, what is my actual scoreboard? Like me, I'm a super competitive person. Like I love competing just for the sake of it. I grew up playing sports. Like I just love that environment. And so I will catch myself sometimes competing against other people's scoreboards. And you don't lose by playing other people's scoreboards. You don't lose by not getting enough points on your scoreboard or not living by your scoreboard. Like you're saying, like, oh, it's the scoreboard itself is more important than the score on the scoreboard. You lose by playing someone else's scoreboard and not your scoreboard.
Want to know the secret to happiness?
What?
It is, instead of comparing yourself to other people or comparing yourself to the gap between where you are and where you want to be, compare yourself to where you started from.
Yeah.
It's The Gap and the Gain by Ben Hardy. Best book ever. If anybody wanted to read a book on happiness, like a manual on how to be happy, I would read The Gap and the Gain. So Ben is coming on this podcast. He's going to be sitting where you're sitting here in 3 weeks.
Nice.
Yeah.
Sick, man. I've heard a lot about that book. You're like the third person who's mentioned it. I'll have to read it. Hey, quick pause here. If you're getting value from these conversations, it would mean the world to me if you took 10 seconds right now to leave a 5-star review. Each review directly helps us reach more people who can benefit from these incredible conversations. And if you're looking to buy a hotel or invest in one of our deals, or even if you just want to say, hey, you can send us an email at hello@thehuntforincredible.com. We'd love to hear from you. Now back to the show.
So let's go back to games. What game do you want to play? How do we enjoy playing this, right? So the gap in the game, the point is living in the gap is where right now you are living this existence and you've got this goal or this ideal, what they call in the book, for where you want to be. So it's either with fitness, it's with faith, it's with relationships. It's like, I'm single, I want to be married. I am fat, I want a 6-pack. I'm broke, I want to become a millionaire. So you have these ideals and all you're living in is that lack where you're like, oh my God, I'm so far away from where I want to be. But for that person that's losing weight, what they're not measuring and what they're not celebrating is, dude, you've lost 20 pounds from where you started. Or like, hey, like maybe you're still single, but you've worked on a lot of traumas and a lot of stuff in your life. Like you have become a better partner, like out the gate. Like you've come so far. And maybe you're not a millionaire yet, but maybe you saved $10,000. That's $10,000 more than you had before. So if you start celebrating how far you've come since where you started, that's an infinite source of joy that you can have versus the infinite ideal that's going to continue to move and move and move. The goalpost continues to move, but you can celebrate the scoreboard of where you've already been. So, dude, the most interesting thing that I think about right now, or the most complex idea that I have, is how do I balance paying? How do I want to phrase this? How do I balance the pursuit of a better tomorrow with enjoying the presence of today?
Oh my gosh, dude, that is something that I have also struggled with.
And that's why I'm kidnapping you this summer to go to Croatia with
me. Because I wouldn't leave the office if I didn't. Yeah, man.
I'm good at it. I kidnapped you for my birthday too.
Yeah. Dude, yeah, because it's like, it's also tricky because that delayed gratification is how you build up towards success. But if you never cash in on that, then what was it all for? Right. And so the conclusion that I've come to, and feel free to criticize this because this kind of goes against what we're saying right now.
Sure.
Is so I have a life mantra that is fuck the marshmallow. And it's based on, the study where they gave a kid a marshmallow.
Who is the marshmallow? Kids. What did she do to you?
What bitter resentment do you have towards marshmallows? No, but it's based on the study where they gave kids a marshmallow and they said, we're going to leave the room. And if we come back and you haven't eaten the marshmallow yet, then we'll give you 2. And my whole perspective on that is do the work for the work's sake. Like, don't do the work for the marshmallow. Find something that you enjoy, that you can get down and dirty, the process. Like, don't just follow your passion, right? I think that's overused. You're going to have to do things that you hate doing to build anything meaningful. But, like, fuck the marshmallow. Like, I don't even give a shit about the marshmallow. I'm in this for the grind and the game because I just love the game. And so my mentality is, like, you'll get burnt out if you're working towards a marshmallow and then it doesn't come, right? Like, people post all the time. They'll post for 90 days and then give up because they don't have 100,000 followers. And it's like, no, don't do it for the 100,000 followers. Do it for the sake of the game and the grind, and learn to love the craft and learn to love creating content and engaging with people, and like learn that process and love that process, and then screw the marshmallow. But then the flip side of that I struggle with.
But only screw the marshmallow if it's consensual.
Yeah. You must first make sure that the marshmallow has accepted your cons. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, but then there's also the flip side of that of like, all right, what are you actually cashing in on? Because that muscle that you've exercised in order to get those things, it's hard to switch off sometimes.
I know too many rich people that all they focus on is ROI and they don't focus on ROH. You know what ROH is?
Happiness.
Return on happiness. Yeah. So it's like, dude, when I make investment decisions, now granted, it's from a privileged position now. Back when I was getting started, I was going to be going for whatever's going to give me the highest ROI, return on investment. But now it's ROH, return on happiness. Like, what can I do that is just genuinely awesome? That's just a sick thing to put in my in the story of my dash. Have you ever heard of Live Your Dash? Yeah, so you've got your tombstone when you die, and you've got your birth date, your death date, and the dash in between. That's your entire life, dude. The dash. And so, like, that is your goal, is to live and to fill that tiny little dash on your tombstone with as much meat and as much material as humanly possible. So all I do is now with my investments, I'm like, and anything I work on, because attention is your highest currency. Like, attention is your most valuable asset. And so now my attention, I'm like, all right, cool. I want to do that because that sounds freaking fun. That sounds freaking sick. I want to do that for the sake of doing it. Because to your point from before, so side quote, the point of the goal is not the accomplishment of the goal. It's who you become in the pursuit of the accomplishment of the goal.
I love that. Yes.
So it's not about finishing the marathon. It's not about finishing the Ironman. It's about being and becoming the person that ran every single day 10 miles to train for it and to build that consistency muscle. And that's something I have to remind myself, because my podcast at this point I thought would have millions of downloads per month. It doesn't. But when I meet all of these hyper successful people that are 100 times wealthier than me, 100 times richer than me, which we can get into quickly, the difference between rich and wealthy. The one thing that they are really, really they admire about me is they said, dude, you did a podcast every day for 3 years. I could never do that. And they respect that. They see that. That's what they latch onto. They don't care about the freaking net worth. They don't care about the cash. They don't care about any of that. They're like, you did a podcast every day for 3 years? I could never do that. And they immediately recognize you as somebody that they should talk to because of the consistency. So yeah, live your dash. Now that's the filter I put everything through. So honestly, like, if everybody put that filter from the very beginning and they just thought, if they have two options of two paths to walk the path that's going to yield a better story.
Yes.
Period.
Yeah.
Because back to your deathbed analogy, or you're 80 years old. I call it the 80-year-old analogy. It's the same analogy that you use. But if you're on your deathbed, people don't ever regret things that they did as much as they regret the things that they didn't do. And so live your dash, live a life that is most worth living, like optimize for the best story.
Yes.
Always. I think if I had one piece of advice, it'd be choose the path that will yield the best story.
Yes.
Period.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. Because then that's also, like, I'd love to touch on how you distinguish between richness and wealth, but it's like, what story will fulfill you the most? Like I always say, like, in terms of creating content, I want to document, not create. And so I always ask myself, am I living a life that I would be interested to follow? Like, if I was following somebody's journey, they were posting content about their life. Like, for my life, would I be interested in following the journey? Like, you and I both know a lot of rich people that we hear their story of how they grew wealth, and it's like, that sounds like the most boring thing in the world.
Another way to phrase what you're saying is, if your life is a movie, are you living a movie you'd actually watch?
Yes. Yeah. 100%. So, like, are you doing interesting things? And of course, again, you're going to experience things that totally suck to do. So you're going to want to skip some scenes for sure. But, like, overall, how interested are you in yourself? Because that's also where you build your self-esteem and your confidence, is by saying, like, oh, dude, I'm actually doing some badass stuff. Like, I actually really enjoy the stuff that I'm doing in the life that I'm living and the challenges that I'm tackling and who I'm tackling them with. Like, are you interested in yourself? And it's when you're not interested in yourself that it impacts your self-esteem, to say, like, oh man, can I actually do these things? Do I actually like what I'm doing? Why do I feel like my energy is lower? Why is it harder to get out of bed and everything else? It's because you don't want to watch your own movie. That's why you're still in bed, because you don't want to go live the movie that you want to watch.
Oh, this is going to be a hard pill for people to swallow, but if you want level 100 relationships, you can't get them living a level 1 life.
Oh, that's good.
If you want a millionaire mentor, you can't have $100 goals. If you want 6-pack friends, you can't have a freaking Fritos on the couch lifestyle. And so doing interesting things is the prerequisite. It's the price of admission, and it's free. It's not that I want to emphasize here. Let's pause for a second and let's make sure that people are really, really internalizing what we're saying. We're not saying that you have to have done interesting things. We say that you are doing interesting things. You're pursuing interesting things. If you want to run a marathon, if you want to run an Ironman, completing an Ironman is an interesting thing. Like running an Ironman and training for an Ironman, it's free for the most part. You go out and run. You go out and bike. Now, obviously, there's some costs associated, but I mean, we'll just say a marathon for this example. It's like it's free to go run. And then all of a sudden at the end, you're a marathon runner. And now you're friends with other marathon runners who are interesting. And so a good litmus test is, again, like it goes back to optimize for the best story. Another way to phrase it is if you have two paths to choose, pick the harder one. Because the people that you meet on that path are going to be so much more interesting and wealthy in every single way than the people that chose the easy path, period. And so it's like for me, in the beginning, I used to buy a house a year and nobody wanted to talk to me. It was not personal. I was the same Brian Luebben that I am today. But as soon as I changed that goal to, I want to quit my $250,000 job and travel full-time around the world, everyone's like, what? That's sick, dude. And people that were worth $80 million wanted to talk to me. Like I met the founder of Priceline.com, Booking.com, Jeff Hoffman. He's a multi-billionaire. And he's like, I did that. He said, I did that when I was younger. He's like, oh, let's talk about it. We became friends. He didn't care about my net worth. He cared that I was doing interesting things.
Dude, that ties into two other incredible pieces of advice that I've gotten. Number one is mentors look for momentum. They don't look for accomplishment. They look for momentum. So you casting a big vision and saying, I am working towards this thing. I am moving towards this thing. I'm obsessing over it. I read books on it. I post content about it. I talk to people about it on my podcast. That's what mentors are looking for. They're looking for the momentum towards the thing. And oftentimes, because this game of growing wealth and businesses is so fun, oftentimes you have incredible mentors that are nearing the end of their road and they want to live vicariously through your journey. And so they want to pour into you and see you accelerate so that they can live vicariously through you. It's the same reason why parents love seeing their kids grow up, grandparents love hanging out with their grandkids. It's like they want to be part of that journey, but you need momentum, and momentum is free.
Better have high energy. Better have energy. Better bring energy. If you don't bring energy, doesn't matter. Like you need to have energy, dude. So if there's something that people can optimize for right now that are living their lives and they're not where they want to be and they want to get into these bigger rooms, and especially if they're younger, a lot of these young guys, like and girls, they tell themselves these stories of, oh, because I'm young, nobody will want to talk to me. And I'm here to change your idea that because you're young, everyone will talk to you. Actually, this is the one part of your life where you have the cheat code over people that are in their 30s and 40s. Everyone will mentor you. The two things that you need that are both free. Number one is you need to have great energy. You need to show up and you need to be a freaking power plant that energizes and inspires them and makes them think about them back in the day. Number two is you need a big ass vision. You need a big ass vision. You got to be a person that's going places. And if you combine those two things, that's what I did. And all of a sudden, these millionaires kept inviting me back into these rooms that I was unqualified to be in because I made them go faster because they remembered what it used to be like in the beginning. And I reminded them of that.
Yes. And that also ties into the second piece of one of the best pieces of advice that I've ever received related to this, which is what I call the law of big pies. And the law of big pies is essentially, if you have a big pie, a big vision, you can slice up that pie and bring rock stars in and still get a piece yourself. But if it's a small pie, there's not enough pie to go around. So you end up having to work the whole damn thing just for a smaller outcome. So you get the same amount of pie, but it's smaller. You don't have rock stars on board. You have to figure everything out yourself. And that was a big lesson that I learned in real estate because I started off buying residential multifamilies and did more work than when I transitioned into buying hotels. But when I transitioned into buying hotels, the pie was big enough and the vision was big enough that people who were experienced and they were rock stars were stoked to get involved. And there was a big enough pie that they each got a piece. So they each were incentivized financially, emotionally, like excited to be a part of the journey, wanting to help out just so that I could grow the portfolio similarly to how they grew the portfolio and everything else. So the law of big pies is a thing. And if you're struggling, it might just be literally because the pie that you're going for isn't big enough. Like you can overnight shift your perspective to say, okay, I'm going to add 2 more zeros to my goal.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just start talking to people about the 2 more zeros that are on your goal and see how their faces light up. Like,
Mm-hmm.
see how they get excited. See how people root for you along the journey, because whether they've succeeded or not in that same thing, they want to be a part of the ride because they want to live vicariously through you. Because that we're herd animals, right? And did you know that humans are actually the only creatures that we know of that they can empathize and experience with things or with others through their experiences? So that's why people love watching Sunday Night Football, because when they see their favorite receiver catch that winning touchdown, they feel like they caught that winning touchdown. The exact same thing applies to business. When you tell people this massive vision that you have and they see that you have momentum behind it, they feel like they are on the journey with you, succeeding in that same thing, and they want to be a part of it.
The power of zero.
The power of zero. I like that.
Power of zero. Add whatever goal you have, add 2 to 3 zeros to it. Takes you the same time, the same energy, the same effort. Completely wildly different outcome for the better. So an instance of this is there's 2 ways to think about goals, right? There's realistic and there's fucking awesome, right? There's a better way to phrase that, I'm sure. But
I like that.
But seriously, no, because think about it, like a realistic goal for me would be to help 1,000 people leave corporate America. That is a very realistic, doable goal. I could point to a scoreboard where I can say, okay, I'm on my way there right now. 1,000 people out of corporate America. Helping 1 million people leave corporate America requires me to think completely differently from the beginning. And that was my goal from the beginning. So that's my decades-long goal. Like, the goal of my 30s is to help 1 million people leave corporate America and start 1 million companies. So by the time I'm 40 years old, I will have 1 million businesses that have been started because of my efforts and because of what I've done. Minimum. So, like, talk about economic output. Like, everybody, like, people don't understand how value works. They don't get it. The discrepancy between price to value in anything is just so wildly underappreciated. So I was telling my team this, like, people on my team make 6 figures. Like, I pay them hundreds of thousands of dollars and they give me millions of dollars of value. I make millions of dollars a year take home because I provide hundreds of millions of dollars of value to other people. Like, Action Academy did 290 million last year. I think we're already at that this year. We're going to, like, the goal this year was $500 million in acquisition. I think we do $1 billion in acquisition in the group this year. Dude, me alone, I'm at like 17 million in acquisition this year. Like, now. So it's insane to, like, think about that. And so people think, and this is a little bit of a sidebar to business, so we can reel it back in, but people think, if I charge $1,000 for a thing, I need to provide $1,000 of value. That's not value. Like, that's not going to create a raving fan. A raving fan, like a satisfied customer is at a 10-to-1 price to value discrepancy. That's a satisfied customer. A raving fan is at 100-to-1 or greater price to value discrepancy. So it's like, if you're charging $10,000 for something, you got to give them $1 million of value. And that's what we do. That's all I think about.
Dude, I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. No, and that's spot on too, because I mean, yeah, it's like there's so many different directions to take this. My brain's like, oh, good, pick one. Which one are you gonna go? Dude, that always happens when I'm talking to you. I'm like, oh, so much. But yeah, man, 100%. And not only that, but back to what you were saying around saying, okay, I'm gonna impact 1,000 people versus 1 million people. It's just a matter of thinking differently. One of those differences and shifts in thinking is that you can also create value out of thin air. Mm-hmm. Like, this whole consumer, like, clock in, clock out, and even the schooling system, the system tries to program us into thinking like, okay, value is an exchange. Like, you pay for value, you give value here, but value can be created literally out of thin air, even just by bringing the right relationships together. So that's what we do with hotels. We find a distressed asset and we say, okay, where is this asset lacking? Is it lacking in marketing? Is it lacking in operations? Is it lacking in capital expenditures? And then we literally just bring the right people in. And this is another one of the best lessons that I've ever received, is creating value through right relationships. So I'm a firm believer in life is fulfilled and you're living a righteous life if you create if you're in right relationships with creation, others, and God, and all three of those things are the same thing to me. And it's, are you creating value through right relationships? So what relationships can you bring together where everybody benefits? And it's through those relationships that value is created out of thin air. So like okay, you find a distressed asset or a small business in your case, like it's lacking in marketing and operations. Okay, what person is an expert in operations in this asset class? What person's a world-class marketer? Bring them together. Instant value is created where everybody wins. It doesn't cost anybody anything. There's no zero-sum game there. It's pure value created by creating right relationships and bringing the right people in.
Have you heard of the $1 Million Dinner?
No, what is that?
All right. So $1 Million Dinner is a free strategy, free tactic that anybody can do no matter where they're at in their local market right now. So what I used to do in Atlanta, Georgia, is I would go to the Atlanta, Georgia real estate investing page, and I would find who are the most active posters, who are guys and girls that were doing big deals, a lot of stuff, really crazy stuff, right? And what I would do is 2 weeks out, I would go and I would book a reservation for like 6 people at a really, really nice steakhouse in Atlanta, Georgia. So Hal's Steakhouse, shout out Hal's. And I would go message us people and I'd say, hey, I'm hosting this private investor dinner where we're going to have other millionaire investors at, would love to extend a private invite to you. We're having 6 spots completely free, would love to have you there. And then I would just message maybe like 10 to 12 people that I saw in there, and I'd bring them all together. And then when they would show up to the dinner, I'd say, oh, like, hi, I'm Brian, I created this dinner. I created this experience. Just wanted to introduce all of you people, and then like just kind of let them mix and mingle. And then they would mix and mingle, and then I would be adjacent, and then I would be viewed as valuable as having introduced them, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's something that's a little like out there that I used to do, but that built me like crazy relationships.
Oh, dude, that's so good, because there's often a misunderstanding that if you bring people together, then like you're losing out, you're missing out if you're not somehow wedged between the bridge, right? So like, oh, if I bring these 2 people together and they do a deal, I want a portion of that deal. So you're trying to broker a relationship and viewing them as transactional, but the real hack is in just giving it all away.
You said something really, 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 really important there, which is, how valuable is a bridge? A bridge is valuable, dude. You've got 2 sides of a canyon or a giant river that needs to be crossed, and you've got a bridge that connects the cars and connects the people, and saving people freaking hours of commute, years of experience. And if you can be that bridge and you can connect person A with person B 100% for free, you just generated millions of dollars of value. So that's what I enjoy doing right now. Like I'm doing this new thing called No Empty Seats. So No Empty Seats is, now I've gotten to a point where whenever I go to an event, or if I'm hosting something or if I'm planning something, I plan it for multiple people and I just book the thing and then I fill it. So for instance, my 30th birthday, we had like 23 people there, and I was able to bring, like, you guys all got to meet each other and everybody got to meet and hang out. And so everyone got a lot of value out of that. Croatia Yacht Week, I was like, I'm going to go spend like $35,000 and I'm going to rent this boat. I had no idea who was going to come on the boat with me. So instead of me before just booking like one spot on the boat, I booked the whole boat. I'm like, who am I filling this boat with? And the people that are coming on that boat are like $1 billion relationships. So it's going to be freaking sick. Like, this is the type of boat you would pay $30,000 to be on. So excuse me. So that's like insane to think about. And so it's just something that, like, No Empty Seats is, even at a very small thing. If you're booking a dinner, book it for 6. Invite some people along. Like, when I'm going to a concert, I don't just buy 1 ticket for me going by myself now. I buy 5 tickets and I just invite people. I have 0 expectation of return.
Yeah. And the other thing to supercharge what we're talking about here is, the longer you wait for an ask, the bigger the ask can be.
Mm-hmm.
So to tie it into the mistake that I think a lot of people make is they say, like, okay, I'm going to build this bridge. How do I monetize it right away? Or how do I broker it? Like, okay, I don't want these 2 people to meet each other. I want to build the relationships and then see if I can broker some sort of deal or make something work. Is you're making the ask way too early. If you build the bridge and other people are getting insane value, it's more like you're investing in an ask down the road. And it's that combination of like, okay, I'm going to add insane value by getting these people to meet. These people are now going to invite me into their circle since they're indebted to me for bringing them great relationships. So now my community and quality of relationships and quantity is going to grow. And I'm just going to keep adding insane value and not making a single ask, and then selectively down the road making the ask. Like I've talked to a lot of people who, within the first time or second time I meet them, they're already saying like, hey, by the way, I have capital that I can invest into a real estate deal. And I intentionally don't ask them for capital for my deals because I just want to add value to them and say, okay, thank you. Like, I appreciate that. That's amazing that you would trust me with that. But I want to keep pouring value into that so that they know, hey, I'm not here just for the transaction and raising capital. Like, you're not just a number to me. You're a person to me that I care about and I'm pouring into. And then down the road, maybe we'll do something together, right? But for me, it's first pouring in value and not making that ask, which is a lesson that I learned too late in life. And I think I'd be 10 times further along if I learned it earlier, where I used to think like, okay, I can afford to make this ask now, or I can afford to make that other ask now, rather than letting that investment compound greater over time so that that ask down the road is not only more accessible, but it's a bigger, more valuable ask that I can get where everybody feels like they won because of how much value I've poured in.
The irony is that is a superpower of mine because it's also my greatest weakness. Is asking. I hate asking. I've always hated asking. It's the worst. I don't like doing it. And so I never ask for help. I never ask for anything. I always give. So that's my default. So it's helped. It served me.
Because once you learn how to ask, you realize like,
once
shit.
I learned how to ask, dude, I've gotten rich by just giving, brother. I haven't even asked for anything yet.
Yeah.
No, my aunt helped me with this. She said that if you never ask, you are directly robbing others of the joy of giving. So if you are unable to receive and all you do is give, you are robbing other people of the joy of giving. I was like, oh, bars, Jane.
Yeah.
And so ever since then, I'm like, got it. So because you ask doesn't make you a burden. But to your point, the longer you delay the ask, the bigger the ask can be. I want to do a quick pivot really quickly because we're having this really cool conversation. I think this is a good segue. We're having this conversation of giving and taking, right? So a little push, a little pull, a little give, a little take. So I want to use this as an opportunity to drop a bomb on people, which is, why are you waiting to give from the graveyard? What I mean by that is people build up all of this wealth, all of this security, all of these riches, and they say, I'm going to give, I'm going to donate, I'm going to do all this philanthropy later when I'm rich, or when I'm dead, I'm going to give it all away. Much better to give it with a pulse. So why is everyone waiting for tomorrow to give when you should give today? And so that's why I really like doing a percentage-based allocation of giving rather than a dollar amount. Same thing with investing. Is invest a percentage, not a dollar amount, because then I just give 10%. And so that 10% gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And now the things that I can do for people are so much more fun. And I do a lot more like local stuff. So we do like charity stuff, and we're going to start a foundation here soon, but we do way more like local, close to home stuff. And so what I like doing is I've got a bucket list fund for my team. And so it's like, I can do anything I want now. It's so much fun. It really is. But it starts to wear off after time. And so, hopefully I'm a poster child for like what financial freedom looks like if you give it to the right person. Because now I get to give my team bucket list experiences. It's freaking fun, dude. Like, so I'm sneaky about it too. So they never know what's coming. So right now, so Caitlin, my community director, she's doing her 10-year anniversary cruise with her husband, and I covered it. I was like, here's babysitter, here's flights, here's everything, go. And we tricked her because we're like, how much does a cruise cost? We want to kind of go on a cruise. Got her. Haha, Caitlin. Stephanie, we're like, how much does it cost to fly from Peru to Europe? Covered her freaking family's flights for their Europe trip. Bam. And then Mason was like, on my team, he's my acquisitions director. And he's like, oh my God, one of my greatest bucket list things is I want to go to a Red Sox Yankees game at Yankee Stadium. And so I got him like Legends Club seats, like right behind home plate.
Oh, that's sick.
Yeah, because he's never going to buy them for himself. And dude, it's so much freaking fun. It's so much fun. I don't remember what I was talking about, but oh yeah, giving. Power of giving. Dude, I'll tell you right now, I'm trying to think of about a pithy way to say it. But let me think. Dude, dopamine really wears off when you're only focused on me and you're only focused on you. But then when you give to others and you serve others and you help others, that dopamine never goes away. So much fun. So now half my money goes towards just serving others. It's so much fun. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think that's amazing. It is really interesting. It's I read a quote the other day. I think it was based on a study that effectively a major component of depression and anxiety, and a lot of people, some people, it's a chemical imbalance and that's handled differently. But for a lot of people, depression and anxiety is actually due to focus on self.
You're too internal.
Yeah. And once they focus on others, it shifts away and that depression and anxiety goes away because now the focus is on others and pouring into others.
Bro, I want to be careful how I say this because it's like, so I will say that a good piece of advice is the best way to serve yourself is through service to others.
Yeah.
But your greatest weakness is your greatest strength overused. So, yeah, sit with that one. Yeah, stick that in your juice box and suck it. Yeah, your greatest weakness is your greatest strength overused.
Well, how do you know how much to use it then?
So, because it starts becoming your weakness. So, what it is for me, it is my confidence right now, and it's my my energy, my confidence, my ambition, my energy. So, overuse becomes cockiness. My confidence overused becomes cockiness. My energy overused becomes anxiety. And my ambition overused becomes obsession. So my greatest weaknesses, my greatest strengths. My greatest strengths, my greatest weaknesses. For my mom, her greatest strength is she's a people person. She's a giver. She's a nurturer. She's a caretaker. She can't take care of herself for shit. So her greatest strength overused is people will use her up and drain every drop from her and give her nothing in return because she surrounds herself and attracts takers only. So that's kind of the juxtaposition of that. So a lot of things in life aren't binary. It's a spectrum. So I will say that about my mom is she just is a giver. But yeah, so she attracts a lot of takers.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Dude, now that you're saying that and I'm reflecting on it for myself, that's the same thing for me, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Like one of my greatest strengths is aligning incentives between others. I mean, we even touched on it a second ago, right? Like building right relationships. It's what we teach in the hotel community and what we built with the deals that we've done, which is like, okay, this asset needs this thing. How do we bring the right people? How do we build the right relationships? And a lot of that ties back to my childhood. So I'm the youngest of 4. So I never had any designated authority for anything. And the only way I got what I wanted was by deeply listening to others and understanding what they wanted and then pitching the whole crowd around something that would align incentives with everybody, right? So if I knew my sister, her goal was to have burgers. My brother wanted to play soccer and I wanted to go to the park. I'd pitch them on the park so that my sister could have burgers, my brother could play soccer, right? So it was like, okay, how do I thread the needle between everybody? And so that is how I ended up creating value, was by listening closely to people and threading that needle. But then overcompensating on that is sometimes I will lean too heavily into threading needles for people that don't actually align with what I'm going for, and it'll end up getting me distracted, which is actually how I came up with that scoreboard theory, which is like, dude, what the hell is my scoreboard? Like, I'm playing this game against other people's scoreboards so that I could thread what they're looking for, and it kind of aligns with what I'm looking for, but then I get distracted with adding value by bringing people together. And it's like, in some sense, I mean, it's the same thing that you're talking about, like, oh, I give and didn't ask. So like, I am happy that I have been able to add value to these people, but sometimes I can take too far of the back seat, and it's like, no, I should also like make sure that I am being mindful of my scoreboard rather than just listening so intently to other people's scoreboards that I end up threading a needle that I shouldn't be investing time in anyway.
I'm an expensive therapist, man. I'll send you my bill later.
That's it. Yeah, we'll
Yeah,
do this every week.
it's a good one, man. And no, I mean, in my like, so we can take all of our traits and like bring them back to childhood is where they originated, right? So it's like, for me, and a lot of entrepreneurs is like we crave the love of a parent that withheld it. And so that's where a lot of perfectionism and overperformance comes from, is like, I'm going to perform my way into your love. And so that's where I started. And so I've been a type A, high driving, high performing perfectionist since I like was walking. I was the kid in the class that was always like, oh my God, I got to be the first one done with the test. I got to be first, got to be first, got to be first, got to be the best, got to be the best, always, everything. Throughout my entire life, I've been that. But now I'm just now to the point where I don't really want to be that person anymore. I want to optimize for peace. Let's talk about peace. Let's talk about peace for a second, because if you do not have a good relationship with peace, financial freedom is pointless.
Yeah.
Pointless. Because what you will do is what I did. Your business work will expand to fill the container that you allot for it. And if your container is 24/7, 365, your work, your business, whatever you create, your side hustle, your investments, your partnerships will expand to fill that box. And that's what I did. Because I had a shitty relationship with peace. I had a shitty relationship with taking a walk in the woods. I had a shitty relationship with sitting and having free time on my calendar. So what happens when you give a high performer free time? They fill it with more work. So what's the point, right? So I'm just now in a process of fixing my relationship with peace, because I have now since realized that if I have no relationship with peace at all, I will never have a peaceful life. And if I'm not choosing to optimize for peace, I'm never going to become a peaceful person. I don't want to be somebody that is people label as high strung. That's not a person that I want to be. Jesse Ray, a mutual friend of ours, like me and him went and traveled in Europe last year. And he straight up was like, dude, like, you're super high strung. Like, you're very high strung. You're stressed like all the time. I'm like, I'm financially free, dude. Like, why am I choosing to be this way? Something to think about. And so I don't want to be that. And I now have since realized, like, you can pinpoint things. And now I'm like, oh, well, I've got a shitty relationship with peace. So I'm working on that. And so now I'm like, okay, cool. When I meet somebody, and I've got what I call like, I've got a lot of energy, but I want to have like a cleaner energy instead of a dirty energy. Like, you came in here talking about how your cold brew makes you feel a different type of buzz than a different type of energy drink. And I don't want to have this chaotic, anxious energy. I want to have like power plant energy that's like really clean, sustainable, and fun and bright and warm. That's who I want to be. Like, that's my vision. So that's who I surround myself with now. To your point of tying the knot all the way back to environment, those are the people I want to hang out with. I don't want to hang out with anxious, stressed out, pissed off entrepreneurs. I don't really. Here's another thing is, in Hormozy and all these people, like they constantly say like, embrace the suck, like go through the grind. I'm like, dude, at this point, like, I feel like they're optimizing for it. Like, that's what fires off the dopamine centers in their brain. That's not what I want. Not to say that I'm going to avoid hard things or that, business is all sunshine, daffodils, and rainbows. But what I can say is, like, two parts of it is like, part number one is like, you can optimize like how you tackle challenges and how you tackle problems, because problems don't go away. Your ability to handle problems and your capacity for handling problems just increases. So I'm like, okay, cool. Why don't we do that? Instead of constantly searching for problems, instead of searching for traumas. Oh my God, dude, I'm in the personal development world and all these motherfuckers are like, oh my God, I've got so much trauma, dude. And they go to Joe Dispenza, then they go to Tony Robbins, then they go to freaking Dave Asprey, and they go to the biohacking little conference, and then they go to an ayahuasca celebration, this ayahuasca ceremony, and they're freaking doing everything every month besides living their fucking life. Like, dude, how about, instead of us talking about our traumas 24/7, we just stop doing this? Because where focus goes, energy flows. And if all you're thinking about is your trauma, you're going to just reinforce that.
Yeah, I actually read that about, I think it was in the 40s, there was a fork in terms of school of thought of how to deal with trauma. And there were two leading psychiatrists of the time. And one of them was the direction that we ended up going, which is like, okay, you need to unpack your trauma, spend time figuring out what your inner child struggled with, etc. And the other path was a different psychiatrist that encouraged forward thinking, like you're talking about. And it was no, focus on the person you want to become and leveraging your strengths, even if your strengths were born out of trauma, which we've just touched on. A lot of strengths are born from childhood trauma. And so those two school of thoughts were a fork in the road, and society ended up leaning more heavily on the route of meditate on your childhood trauma and your inner child and unpack it and deal with it, whatever that means, and talk about it and reconcile it, etc. But studies have shown that people actually find more success in reducing their anxiety and stress levels when they focus on the future and leveraging their strengths and like accepting, right? Not like just boxing up and ignoring what happened to them, but by accepting what happened to them, but focusing on how they actually leverage it and what they do with it. And I'm a firm believer that humans, so this is maybe a contrarian view, is that I believe that what makes humans incredible and part of our path to doing incredible things is leveraging our trauma. And is that trauma? Because I've spent a lot of time looking back, and at first I thought like, oh damn, I was one of the lucky few that got totally unscathed. Like I do not have any trauma. And then as I learned more about my behaviors and being married to a phenomenal woman who's been a great set of like eyes that can look at me from the outside, but who's also like very wise and thoughtful in her feedback and how she views and analyzes me. Like I realized like, oh shit, yeah, there actually was a lot of stuff. I just didn't call it trauma. Like I used to think like, oh, I have like no stress. I'm the most calmly back person in the world. And I realized that I'm just so comfortable with stress that I never called it stress. I always called it excitement. And chemically in the brain, there's not a very good distinction between excitement and stress. Like oftentimes it's just the disposition towards that chemical response, right? So like rock stars going on stage will feel tingles in their fingers and talk about the excitement, whereas other people might talk about stage fright and anxiety, but it's the same chemical response. So I was just called it excitement, but I realized that it is still born from an environment growing up that turned me into a thing that, like, I would say,
I'd argue that's a good thing though.
yeah, it is.
Like
But
that's a good
totally,
byproduct.
totally. And that's my point, right? Is that like, I think we look at our inner child and the traumas that happen, and some traumas are 100% bad and should be avoided, and it really deeply scars people, and it's worth acknowledging that. But there's also heavy elements, like you were talking about, of this like obsessive work nature and feeling like you need to prove yourself. And look at the beautiful life that it's afforded you now. And like, of course, you have to deal with certain things, right? But it also afforded you being able to travel the world. And same with me. The thing that I struggle with, just to get vulnerable a bit here, is I grew up in an environment where my parents were incredibly loving, the best parents in the world. I'm so thankful for them. But the environment that I grew up in was one where performance and output was the gold standard, and struggle to get there was praised. And so to me, I needed to perform, and struggle was part of the process. And so I would grind and struggle, and I'd embrace the pain, like we were talking about, like love the pain, love the grind. This is part of the process. It wasn't until I got older that the struggle and pain, although it does come up naturally, it's not a necessity to actually succeed. Like there is a path of like calm focus and output without the stress. And that was another piece of amazing feedback that my wife gave me. Was she was like, you just pile on work until it stresses you out, and that's where you're comfortable. And I was like, no, I don't. And then I started reflecting. I was like, oh shit, whenever I feel calm and like things are running smoothly, I think I'm not going fast enough. Like I'm only going fast enough when the wheels are about to fall off, and I need to keep the wheels on. Like that is the razor thin line that I need to ride to make sure I'm going fast enough. And it wasn't until I spent a lot of time deeply reflecting and analyzing myself that I realized I can go just as fast without the strain and the struggle. Like there is a fluid, clean path of acceleration and speed where I don't need to feel the stress of a million tons on my shoulders, and I can just cruise. So that's something that I'm looking at and saying like, okay, take this childhood quote unquote trauma, and how do I leverage that to move as quickly as possible while at the same time getting rid of the bad habits that are actually slowing me down that I thought were catalysts for growth and movement?
Mm-hmm. Well, two questions that people can ask that could solve most of their problems, right? Spoiler alert. Cliffhanger. One of those questions is, what if it was easy?
Yeah.
What if this was fun? Like, what if this was simple? Because most of the stuff that we're trying to grind and stress and agonize over has already been figured out. It's all figure outable if it hasn't already been figured out. 99.97% of it's been figured out. So what if it was simple? So it's like, we're like, oh my God, we got skill to this and this amount of members and this blah, 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 blah. What if it was simple? Most of it is. We just overcomplicate it because we have this idea and story in our head that a larger result requires more complex thinking and strategy, which is false. Which leads to the second question, which is questioning, does this thought serve me? So when you have a thought, let me think about how I want to phrase that. You can't control the first thought that pops into your head, but you can control the second, which is, does the first one serve me? So the first thought never goes away through personal development, right? Like that first thought's still going to pop up. You see somebody on the street and you're like, oh my God, like, look at you, like ugly or hideous, or you're like, wait a second, like, why am I judging somebody? Or somebody's like cuts you off in traffic. You're like, asshole. You're like, no, well, hold on a second. Like maybe they got somewhere to be. Like, it's not about me at all. And so giving yourself permission to have that first thought, the first thought doesn't go away, is what I've learned in personal development work. First thought doesn't go away, but it's giving yourself permission to feel that first thought, but then just replace it with that second thought right out the gate, which is like, hey, does that serve me to think that? Does it serve me to be stressed about that? And for you, when you're talking about your traumas and stuff, and how they've shaped you, there's a reason that the windshield's larger than the rearview mirror. Right? So a lot of people are sizing their rearview mirror to the size of the windshield, and they wonder why they're not getting anywhere. It's because they're sitting in a parked car looking back.
Dude, that's so good.
Yeah. So it's just like we can recognize the traumas and the reasons why we do things, but then you need to process that and need to move through it, and you need to replace that with a new belief. So instead of just seeing a belief sitting there and being like, okay, I see you there, or a story that we tell ourselves, then we can replace that story and say, okay, I'm going to replace it with this story instead. And that's the story that I'm going to adopt moving forward. A story that I used to tell myself was how success works, which was wildly wrong. So I used to think success was like a rocket ship where you have all of this fuel, all of this friction, like a SpaceX shooting up into the moon, right? And you have all of this freaking energy and explosions and so much force and friction. But that's not how success works. Success isn't the addition of all of this rocket fuel and flame. Success is like a hot air balloon that has all of these sandbags around the ground, and then you just cut away the sandbags.
Oh, yeah.
And you just rise by default. That's how success works. So success is a game of not addition, but subtraction. So you're subtracting limiting beliefs, negative thoughts, self-fulfilling prophecies, bad relationships, bad environments. You're just cutting away the sandbags, and you're just like, now I'm successful. Now I'm rising by default. It's crazy. And so you have success, path to success 1, which is grind or die, force and friction, all of this stress and anxiety. And you got path 2 to success, which is, dude, this is super fun, and I'm liking the view on the way up, and I want to ride that freaking wave of success. I don't know, man. Like, success is found in the climb, not the summit. And I've just summited so many mountains now that I'm like, why would I stress out about this? Honestly, because none of it really matters at all. Like, the only thing that matters is the person that you become on the journey to the summit. I don't know. Any other ideas? I'm rambling right now. Yeah. Any other ideas or places you want to take it?
Yeah, that's good. No, I've got 2 things for that. Number 1 is yes helps you get in the game. No helps you scale.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
people don't respect the price of a yes.
They don't respect the price of a yes, and they don't appreciate the value of a no.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like, what are you saying no to? Like, what sandbags are you cutting? What opportunities are you saying no to? What shiny objects are you saying no to? What are you staying laser focused on? Because it's that focus that'll actually get you there. It's that focus that is cutting the sandbags to make sure that your blimp can float away.
Here's a great question nobody asks. Instead of saying, what do I need to do to be successful and hit my goals? They need to say, what do I need to remove?
Yeah. Yeah, like New Year's
What am I willing to
resolution.
give up? Instead of what am I willing to do, instead of saying, what am I willing to do to hit this goal, say, what am I willing to give up? And that will take you 10 times further in the pursuit of the goal. Because, for instance, I'll give you a funny one right now. So I texted all my friends. I said, I'm going to have a 6-pack by summer. This is actually a contradictory thing to my normal behavior and my normal existence. I'm serious. I said, I want to have a 6-pack going into summer, right? And they're like, all right, cool. Like, we're going to go do the cardio. We're going to get on the diet. We're going to start everything up, the training routine. And I started doing it for a little bit. And I found myself falling back into old patterns where I was starting to say like no to people to go out to dinners and then I was just not going out with friends to grab some drinks because I wanted to stay in. And yes, you could come up with an excuse. So you can come up with, not an excuse, but you can come up with a reframe that says, oh, you could still go to dinners and have the chicken breast. You can still go to out and drink sparkling water instead of a gin and tonic. But for me, I didn't want to. I wanted to go have the steak. I wanted to go have some dessert. I wanted to go have some wine. I wanted to go have some gin and tonics and some old fashions. And so I was like, no, you know what? I am not willing to give this stuff up to have a 6-pack by summer. I'm good where I'm at. I'm fit already. I'm healthy already. I don't need a 6-pack. I would rather go do this instead. And I think if more people just acknowledged, I am not willing to give up what it takes to hit this goal, and just were honest with themselves, they would have way less stress in life. That was the first time that I've done that. Dude, this is insane. For some reason, it just made me respect this person so much. So we run Action Academy, right? So the community, the mastermind that helps people quit corporate America to start their own business. So leave a job you hate to build a life and business that you love. Somebody paid us $10,000 and they joined. And 4 days in, they asked for a refund. And I was like, that is super rare. What is happening? I go, hey, why do you want a refund? And they said, I looked at the amount of work that it was going to take, and I decided it's not worth it. I'd rather just keep my job. And there was a part of me, an old version of me, that would have said, what are you talking about? Like, you have financial freedom over here. You have all this like wonderland over here. But then now me today, I was like, I respect the hell out of that.
Yeah.
I respected it. I don't know if that's a right or wrong response, but I was like, you know what? Here's your money back. Hell yeah.
There's also a lot of value that
Power in
comes
that.
from, like aligning your actions with what you know to be true. Instead of saying like, oh, I'm not capable, I'm having a hard time with this, just accepting like, oh, I'm just not willing to do this. And
Just admit
by
it.
acknowledging it and calling it out, and it aligns with your behaviors and your actions, like that alignment, the return on that alignment in terms of like personal happiness and fulfillment is huge. Because then you can also say, okay, what am I willing to do? And then you shift your course to what you're willing to do rather than saying, I am just struggling with this, but really deep down, it's just because there's not alignment with what your actions are and what your intentions are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then if you just didn't ride that wave in the first place, you'd be so much better off instead of always like bucking against like what you think that you're supposed to do and you're not doing it all. So now I'm like careful about what I say yes to. So you just said like, respecting the price of yes. Like yes takes you to your million, no takes you to 10. And people don't respect the price of their yes because every single yes needs to be justified and paid for by 100 no's. So every single, oh, can I take you to coffee and pick your brain? I'm like, no, it's taking time away from my business and from my team. It's like, oh, can we get dinner? I'm like, that could take away time from your family. So it's just like everything that you're saying yes to. That's why I respect whenever we do our international events and people are at our international events, like in the Dominican Republic or Cancun or wherever we're at, Costa Rica. I'm like, you're spending time away from your family to be here. I respect that. I'm going to make sure that I earn that. Like there's a lot of no's that required you to say yes to this. And I respect the price of that. Most people don't respect the price of their own yes.
Yeah, 100%. All right, being mindful of time, I do want to get this great piece of advice. I know this is something that's impacted you. We've talked about this a lot, is building in public.
Mm-hmm.
The return from building in public has been 10 to 100x what I thought it would be, and has come
So I told you
10 to 100 times earlier.
Yeah.
For like Like literally building in public. And I think people overthink, they're like, oh, I don't know what my mission is. I don't know what I'm trying to do this. I don't know how I'd create content. I don't know how to do it. Like you're overthinking it already. Literally just build in public. And if you don't know what you're building, then just in public. Like be in public while you figure out what you're building, and just getting it out there is massive. So what are your thoughts on that piece of advice and how to add more structure to it?
One failure is worth 100 successes. So if people change how they think about content with that perspective, content is so much easier. Because you don't have to be rich and with a six pack and super successful posting about how wonderful your life is. You can say, man, oh man, did I fuck this up? Like I screwed this deal up, or I screwed this project up, or man, I screwed my relationship up and here's how I'm fixing it. Dude, the failure is the content. The grind is the freaking story. That's the content, dude. So it's like, I think we're at a point in content now in media where people do not trust the person who's got a really shiny styrofoam package life. People respect the person that is saying, hey, like, I am not perfect and here's where I messed up. Another thing is people are afraid to share opinions online and then go back and realize that they were wrong. So they don't call their shot online. But there have been so many videos that I made 2 years ago where I didn't know what the hell I was talking about. And now I'm like, hey, I was wrong here. Like podcast episodes, dude. Like I said, I'm going to build a $10 million company in the next 3 years. And now we're coming up on it. And I think we'll probably hit 5 or 6 million, which again, did I fail? No, I just didn't know what I was talking about. But now here's the thing, which is a little bit of a sidebar. So remind me and we can bring it back to this conversation. But, dude, it's oh shit. Hold on a second. Hold on a second. I just freaking lost it because I just crossed my wires there, dude. I just went like 3 different directions in my brain. No, but it's so so I had a goal of hitting $10 million and I only hit like 5 or 6. And I'm trying to think, there was a point that I was going to make about this podcast edit for editor. Dude, it really is like going back to the idea of like the goal is not the goal. Like who you become is the goal. Oh, now I remember what it was. Oh my God. Why does this keep happening to me? All right. Podcast edit. So I called my shot 3 years ago on the podcast and I said, I'm going to build a $10 million company from scratch by the time that it's like 2026. Right. And so now we'll hit $5 or $6 million this year. And you could say that that's a failure on paper, but for me, I'm like, no, I have now since built the skill of making $5 million a year. And like, we are working towards the skill of $10 million a year, because every single year that you don't know how to make $1 million costs you $1 million. But every single year since compounds on itself, because now you know easily how to make $1 million and you won't settle for less. Have you heard the concept of thermostat versus thermometer?
I don't think so.
Yeah. I keep asking that. But so thermostat. So a thermometer reacts to its environment. A thermostat sets the environment. So a thermometer is going to say, "Oh, it's getting hotter, it's getting colder," and it's just going to reflect that reality. But a thermostat sets it. So what a lot of people have is that financial thermometer, where they're reacting to where they're at and they're not doing anything about it. And they've got that 72 degrees of comfort to where that's where they want to sit. But if you're a thermostat, you're not reactive. You're actually setting the mood. You're setting the temperature. And so now my thermostat is freaking set at freaking $1 million a year, $5 million a year. And that thermostat doesn't get turned back down, for the rest of my life. So honestly, for people listening, the faster that you learn, the more it compounds over time, because I learned the skill set at freaking, now at 30 years old. So just for the sheer fact that I learned this at 30 rather than 40, rather than 60, I can now compound that across that 20 years and like have that build on itself.
100%. And I mean, that's like a huge part of the value of communities like ours is that accelerated learning, right? So we just talked about the other day when we were talking about the hotel community is like, it can take you 6 to 7 years to figure this out on your own, or it can take you 6 to 7 months to do it with the community. And what is the price or the value of that compounding return by learning it in 6 to 7 months as opposed to 6 to 7 years? Because if you look down the road 20 to 30 years, that's a difference of tens of millions of dollars just from compressing that timeline and accelerating that learning. And that is the value that I don't think a lot of people think about, is like, okay, like everybody's looking at that shiny object of, okay, I want to be a millionaire, I want to be worth 10 million, whatever it is, and not giving enough time to the rate of learning to get to that thing, right? They think about learning, but they're so focused on that goal. But if they focus on the rate of learning, the rate of acceleration, the rate at which they surround themselves with people who have done that thing, like literally, if you just shaved off 50% of the time. So rather than thinking about the people that you're going to meet next month, how about you shoot them a DM today and ask them like, hey, you want to be on my podcast? We can chat for an hour. I can ask you questions and I'll give you attention. Don't ever ask somebody to just pick their brain for no reason, right? Like make sure you're adding value, which is another great reason for podcasts, is like, how do I actually talk to these people a month quicker? How do I do all these things a month sooner? If you look at your timeline, you say, okay, I want to own a hotel or a small business sometimes within the next 18 months. What happens if you say 6 months? Like what shift in thinking happens, and what is that compounding return, assuming you are able to actually take that thing down in 6 months rather than 18?
It's called Parkinson's law. So what a lot of people don't realize, the only difference between the rich and the poor is that the rich just condense time frames just because they know it's possible. And it's the same thing that's available to the average person, right? So I used to have a goal of, I'm going to be financially free within 5 years. And I was like, yes, 5 years, that's what I'm going to be. And then a coach one day asked me, he's like, well, how do we do it in the next 6 months?
Yeah.
And I go, how would I? And the quality of your life is directly in correlation to the quality of questions that you ask. And so just like ChatGPT, depending on the prompt that you put into it, will like the better answer you'll receive. It's the same thing with your brain, the ultimate ChatGPT, right? So I was asking, okay, well, how do I do it in 6 months? And we came up with a really interesting conclusion, which is, why do I care about passive income? And I realized I didn't as much. And if everybody could just kind of sit with that for a bit, then they would realize that the idea of financial freedom originally was very, very static and rigid, where it's, first it was my passive income from my passive real estate investments fuels my existence, or my passive stock portfolio fuels my existence. So it's that 4% rule, where I think to have $100,000, you need to have $2.5 million invested in index funds at a safe withdrawal rate of 4%. And then that continues in perpetuity. So that's where people started at. But then I was just like, all right, that's a lot of equity that I need to invest for that pure passive income. And then so I just, for the first time, my coach was like, why has it got to be passive? And I realized, I was like, well, hold on a second. Since I don't want to live a passive life, why would passivity be the thing that I optimize for? So instead of optimizing for passivity, I optimize for, since I don't want to really remove work, how do I just bring in a new flavor of work that I enjoy doing? And just changing how I thought about that answer to that question was, how do I do it in 6 months? I realized I couldn't purely passive income my way out in 6 months. But then I started up that side hustle with the podcast, and I started making freaking $12,000, $14,000 a month from that freaking thing on top of my real estate. And that's how I got out. Had I waited 5 more years, had I waited to purely passive income my way out of my job, I would have been still working it. 3 years later now, I'd still be in that job. And so that's why we talk about cash flow instead of passive income, because cash flow is degrees of passivity. And now an argument could be made with the business that I have today. I can go work in Europe. I can go work in Japan. I can go work anywhere now. I've got a team doing things for me. And I was like, dude, this is kind of feeling a lot more passive than your freaking real estate syndications, because I've built it, But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so 2 things. One is one of my favorite quotes I've ever heard, and the other is one of the best pieces of advice I've ever received. One of my favorite quotes is, your mind will answer whatever questions you ask it, so ask it magnificent questions. Like, make sure the question is magnificent, of like you're saying, like, okay, how do I become financially free within 6 months? If you ask your brain, how do I become financially free within 6 years? It'll tell you, and it'll take 6 years. If you ask yourself, how do I become financially free in 6 months? It'll tell you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first thing, is like, I think your life is completely dictated by the quality of questions, like you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes, literally the only difference between you making $1 million bucks this year, or are you making $150,000 this year, is literally just the question you ask yourself.
Hmm?
And that is something that is so simple and so accessible. Like, it's completely free to just ask yourself that question and to meditate on that question and say, what would it actually look like? So that's the first thing. The second thing, one of the best pieces of advice I've ever gotten is I was talking to a mentor and I was sharing with him what my goals were and what I had to get there. And he said, don't tell me what you have and what you're going to do with it. Tell me where you want to go and what you need to get there.
It's not about resources, it's about resourcefulness.
100%. And that shifted my thinking, because before I was looking at what I had and said, okay, I have this real estate portfolio. How do I plan to leverage it so that I can get access to bigger deals and everything else? And he said, no. Tell me, like, what are you trying to get to? And then reverse engineer that. And it shifted my thinking away from, okay, I've got these assets and I can either refi or exit or whatever, and then roll that up into bigger deals. And it shifted it to, I want these bigger deals. I need capital in deals. How do I actually get that? And it dramatically compressed my time it dramatically compressed the time it took me to get into commercial real estate and start doing bigger things. And it was literally a matter of just shifting the question that I asked myself, because I saw the world totally differently.
Yeah, if people just realized that all of life is just cake baking, it'd be a lot easier. So all you seriously, I mean, seriously. So how do you bake a cake? You go look up the recipe, you get the ingredients, right? And so everything that you want to do, no matter how difficult it is, there's a few ingredients that comprise of the thing, and there's a recipe that you follow. And so what people are doing is you're paying for the recipe when you're paying for people or masterminds or whatever. Like, you just need to go surround yourself with the people that have already baked that cake that you want to bake. And then you just see the ingredients. So I have this thing where it's the MBT framework. So must be true. Like, what must be true for me to have a $10 million a year business? And we just dissected it. I was like, well, we don't have a marketing department. We'd have a media company that's funneling that. You know, we'd have somebody that's in charge of YouTube. We'd have a YouTube team, a podcast team, a LinkedIn and Twitter team. Like, we have teams that are around all of this. Okay, cool. So it's not just me. It's a team that's doing it. We'd have a giant fulfillment team. We'd have this amount of applications per month. We'd have to have this type of sales team. So this type of marketing team, this type of media team, this type of sales team. Okay, cool. Then for fulfillment, we need this type of operations team. And you just take all the ingredients to the cake and you just put it all together and you follow the recipe and you bake it.
Yeah. And then a big part of that too is seeing what can be cut out to get to that cake. Like, so for example, on a lot of my coaching calls, so I talk to a lot of people who have a bunch of short-term rentals, like, oh, I want to get into hotels. And so often, regardless of how many short-term rentals they have, they think they just need a few more before they need to get into hotels. And it's like, first of all, you don't need a few more. Second of all, you don't even need any short-term rentals at all. So the fact that you have some, you're already like dipping your toes into something that you could just leap right into. And so often we tell ourselves, like, oh, I just need a few more of this or that. But it's really just a lie that we tell ourselves so that we can hide from this thing that we're scared to jump into, because it is freaky to go for bigger deals and it's scary to do this and that. And by talking to somebody who's done it before and saying, no, that's not the recipe. You don't need another short-term rental. You can literally just dive right into this thing. And this is how you do it, is the hack. I mean, it's back to what we were talking about before. Your environment is everything. And your environment is surrounding yourself with people who say, hey, look, this is the recipe. You don't actually need that ingredient. You need this other ingredient. And your path to get there is a lot shorter than you think. But first, you have to try to compress that time and then talk to other people to figure out how to bake that cake. Dude, I love that analogy. Life's just baking cakes. Once you figure out how to bake the cake, you just bake it.
Dude, life's just baking cakes and playing games. So it's like, when you think about it, adulthood's just a race to return to childhood. Yeah. So the people that win adulthood are the ones that are most childlike. Not childish I just had this podcast interview that talked about that. He's like, the difference between childish and childlike. So childlike is you play, you have no limits, you have no biases, like, you just love everyone as your neighbor and you have a great freaking time and you're super curious. That's childlike. And then childish is super scarcity, like very immature, very me-centric, like all of these different things. So yeah, it's just adulthood is a race to return to childhood. You have any other topics left to close out with?
I do. I've got this one, which is a pretty contrarian thought, which is owning a business isn't any more risky than being an employee. And oftentimes it's less risky than being an employee. And just to clarify, it depends on the business, right? Like if you have
Yeah.
a stable business, this, that, etc. But I was just talking to somebody the other day who their business went tits up.
Uh-huh.
And they were talking to me and they were like, dude, I thought it was safe, but my business ended up closing shop and now I got to figure out what to do. And the reality is, like, when you are an employee and you think to yourself, oh, like, I'm glad I can sleep well at night because I don't have that responsibility, you still are bearing that same risk. It's just that you don't have all the information and somebody else is responsible for it, but they're still making decisions that impact your life. And if the business starts struggling, they might let you go while the business survives. So you might as well just bear that responsibility, take ownership of those decisions, make 10 to 100 times as much as everybody else in the company since you decided to take on that responsibility, and be aware of that risk allocation. Because, you know, like oftentimes people are like, oh, I want to start a business, but I don't know because I got a family and this and that. And it's like, yeah, I mean, like the risk profile of every situation is slightly different, but owning a business is not inherently any more risky if you have the right business.
Starting a business and buying a business are two different conversations.
Totally.
And risk is the ultimate conversation that you're having there, to which I'd argue that, especially in your 20s and 30s, the biggest risk that you can take is taking no risk, because everything that you want in life is on the other side of risk. And so the more safe that you play it, the less freedom and control that you will have over your life in its entirety. So buying a business mitigates the risk slightly because you're buying something that's already proven over like 5 to 7 years. So that's why I like buying companies, because they already have, like systems and they've already kind of been through some stuff. So I'm like, all right, cool. That's a little bit better for me to run something that's already been running. And then I do it with multiple partners. So that way I'm mitigating my risk as much as I can. But to your point, employment is a contract that we sign with corporate America that says I'm sacrificing my family, my freedom, my personal life, my relationship for security. And that's the contract that you sign when you have an employment contract, because you're saying, I'm going to give up my life to advance your company. And in return, I want to know that I'm getting paid every week so I can pay my bills. But now that's not happening anymore. And we don't have that security anymore. So now the risk reward is thrown off. So it used to be having a corporate income was the ultimate sign of security. And now I'm like, dude, you only have a corporate income? That's really risky, you know? So my mom, she's been a nurse for years and years and years, like decades. She's been a nurse. And now, she's got a new change of management. She doesn't know if she's going to stay employed for decades, So it's crazy. Like, it's like that drop of a hat. You never know. And so I'm like, well, at least for your own business, like you're building relationships and connections. Like for me, my cash flow, I can say that when it comes to a business, like if you over leverage and you overextend, yes, that is really risky, but I bootstrap all my companies and I do what's called profit first. So when you do profit first, like it helps add some defensive metrics. But for me, it's like when I'm looking at my companies, it's not the cash flow is defense metric number one, but your community is defense metric number two. So I knew when I was leaving my job, I left my job and I was like halfway through, my cash flow got cut in half. I was like, shit, what do I do? But it was figure outable because of my network and my community. So I would say that the more you can build a community and the more you can build a network, the safer that you are through all of the risk. And so that's helped me a lot. What do you think?
Yeah, and I completely agree. I remember when I first started off my career, like my first job out of college, I joined this leadership development program for this multi-billion-dollar company, and they sent me all over the world working on different departments and building out infrastructure and streamlining their stuff. It was an absolute blast. And so studying the space, it was in the energy sector, and there was an energy company called Chesapeake, and they were worth like, I don't know, $500 million or something. And during the energy crisis, I think this was 2016, they ended up going under. And the CEO founder was this big famous guy. They ended up going under and it was all crazy. And I'll never forget, 3 months later, he had already built another $100 million company. And I was like, what the hell? How did this guy bounce back so quick? He literally lost everything, went bankrupt, and within 3 to 6 months built another $100 million company. And when I looked into it, it was because of his expertise and his connections that enabled him to do it. Because back to what you're saying about Like building a company or striving towards your goals isn't about the goal. It's who you become on your way to the goal. And if you can build up the skills and become the person on your way to the goal, then you're developing things that can never be taken away from you, no matter what the economy does, no matter what the environment does. If you have the right relationships and you've become the right person, then bouncing back is something that is like it can't be taken away.
I haven't really heard of many entrepreneurship stories that don't involve a bounce back.
Yeah. Yeah.
To be honest,
Or multiple, just like losing
it
everything
creates a lot of
multiple times.
anxiety. It creates a lot of anxiety for me, or at least that was a story that I used to tell myself is whenever things get really easy, I'm like, oh, what's going to happen? Because I hear all these stories about all these horror stories of like all these bad things happening to people. I'm like, well, things are really good for me. What bad's going to happen now? So it's this crazy story that I tell myself that makes me anxious all the time, or at least used to. Yeah. So I'm trying to work on that.
Yeah.
Bullshit. I'm working on that.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Yeah, and then something else that, I mean, this kind of ties into what we spoke about earlier, but that line of like, okay, so obviously don't fabricate strain in your life. Like, don't obsess over the grind and the pain so much that you fabricate it. But there's also another incredible element that can't go unforgotten, which is another contrarian belief that I have, which is the pain and the suffering turns you into an elevated version of yourself if you respond to it correctly.
So, because it's inevitable. So I would argue that pain is inevitable, suffering is optional.
Oh, I like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Suffering is your reaction to pain.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And it also ties into another belief that I have, which is events are neither good or bad. What's good or bad is how you respond to those events. So like, the market being tough, straining on your business, whatever it is, like the only thing you should be focused on and obsessed on is how you respond to those things. You shouldn't stress over the outcomes and what happens here or there, because oftentimes those are from external factors that you can't help, but you can do your best in every situation. So just how are you responding to those situations, those events? A good example is when I first got into real estate, my wife's health was super rough. And I've told this story on a handful of podcasts, so maybe people have heard it, but my wife, her health started getting a little crazy. She would get brain fog, and it got to the point where she would get really disoriented, and her health began to decline. So we took her to doctors. They ran a bunch of tests. Everything came back normal. Her health continued to decline to the point where she was completely bedridden. Like we didn't know what was going on. She couldn't get up. She couldn't string sentences together. We took her to even more doctors. I think total, we ended up taking her like 10 doctors. They did every single blood panel you can think of. All the results came back negative. Like nobody knew what was going on. And I had to have a serious conversation with God, accepting like, yo, I've done everything here. Like accepting the fact that my wife could go. Within that 4-month period that happened, my mom also got a form of liver cancer that had a 20% survival rate. And my dad got rushed to the ER for heart failure, and they said he needs a heart transplant, but he might not make it because it takes time to find another heart and swap it out. And so literally within a 4-month period, while we were in the middle of a real estate transaction that was like full on stress. And I remember going on long walks and thinking to myself, I am under so much strain right now that I'm forced to ask myself questions that I wouldn't be able to ask if I was not in this environment. So what nuggets of wisdom can I pull from these experiences? And I became obsessed over what lessons can I learn from this emotional and physical and psychological strain that I'm going through. And fortunately, by God's grace, miraculously, my wife, we figured out what was going on.
What was it?
It was, she ended up getting long COVID, which ended up causing her nervous system to go haywire. And your nervous system, we know very little about. It's like the brain and nervous system and immune system are the last 3 things that we like need to figure out. Like we don't understand how they work nearly at all. And so she had an overreactive nervous system to strain. And so once we figured that out, we ended up getting her on a protocol and doing things that resolved it. My mom ended up surviving her liver cancer, and then my dad ended up getting the heart transplant, literally miraculously. And coming out of that, now I have these lessons and this perspective on life where I feel like I can do anything, because I discovered through that it's all about how I respond to this strain and stress. And so I was able to ask myself questions in those moments that I wouldn't be able to ask myself otherwise. And so it's a matter of like, it's not finding the good in every situation. It's not finding the silver lining. it's understanding that everything is silver if you respond to it properly and you learn and you look for like, what's the lesson here? How can I grow as a person? What can I take away out of this, right? Like there's the proverbial story, the hero's journey of the hero traveling into the pits of hell and bringing back the treasure to share with everybody, right? It's like, what lessons can I learn and share with people, whether it's on this podcast or whether it's other places, people that I can relate to their struggles and challenges and what they're going through, and be able to relate to them and provide insights and say, yo, I've been there too, and I learned these lessons, and this is my disposition towards life now because of it. So how can I give back that treasure, right? So it's like, how do you respond and engage with this strain that you can actually learn from, and then also multiply that value by giving it to the world?
Mm. Empathy is earned.
Mm.
Yeah. Because to your point is like, I couldn't really empathize with most people until I got my heart broken.
Yeah.
And then that was the day where I could finally, like, then it just kind of opened for me. Like after, like, cause that was one of the lowest points in my life, is you were talking about that. And for me, it was like thinking I had everything figured out, you know, and it's funny, like books get sent to you, I think, when you're supposed to read them. And so I read the book, The Surrender Experiment, on the flight in 2022 to travel. And, for me and sharing the story that I shared before, you know, was what made it so consequential for me. It wasn't necessarily the woman herself, my ex, but it was this idea that I had. And I had this idea where I was like, I finally did it. Like, I was always worried that I'd never be able to date somebody, that I'd always like that I'd turn out like my dad, and then I got into a long relationship. I was like, no, I am good at this. I can do this. Like, I'm gonna marry her. Like, we're gonna have kids. Like, we're gonna do this. And it's like looking back, it truly was like the idea of it, right? Right. So sometimes you fall in love with the idea of someone more than the person themselves. And so I had this idea. I was like, man, this is it. So we're going to propose, we're going to get married, we're going to have babies, and didn't happen. We broke up. And so it's like, huh, that's not what I wanted. And because what we want, we just pull out of thin air. So now I'm working a lot more on surrendering to like God's plan again. God's delays are not God's denials. And here we are 3 years later. It's like now I'm kind of like earning that statement because I thought I was like, oh, well, now I'm ready, right? Now I'm ready to really meet my soulmate. But it's been 3 years, and I'm looking back at me 3 years ago. I was like, no, it wasn't. And so maybe it's tomorrow, maybe it's a year from now, maybe it's 10 years from now. I don't know. But I'm working a lot more on surrender and just trusting like the path and all the good and all the bad that happens, and just going along the ride, because like we don't really have control over any of it anyways. So it's like we're just going to do our best, set our vision, set our intention. But what I have seen is, man, when you set that vision, kind of in closing here, God will reward the person that has that vision set, because every single person that I've seen that has successful, like they wrote that crap down and God said, okay, I see you. I respect that. How you're going to get there is going to be this crazy hero's journey that you're not going to expect, but I'll take you there. I can almost, the final guarantee I can make on this podcast is if you write down what you want, I can almost guarantee that you will get it. And I can with even more certainty guarantee that you won't get it in the way that you thought you would.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we can wrap it up with a story that ties into that. One of my favorite parables is there's a story of a farmer and his son, and they had a horse, and the horse escaped, and his neighbor said, oh my gosh, that's terrible. And the farmer said, yeah, maybe. And then the horse came back with a bunch of other horses, and everybody said, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And the farmer said, yeah, maybe. And then one day his son was breaking in one of the new wild Mustangs that had come back, and the Mustang kicked his son off, and his son broke his leg. And his neighbor said, oh my gosh, that's terrible. And the farmer said, yeah, maybe. And then there was a war, and the draft came in, and his son was spared because of his broken leg. And people said, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And he said, yeah, maybe. And the whole moral of the story is there's no like good that is not impacted by bad, that is not impacted by good. The life has these ebbs and flows that flow in and out of each other so fluidly that you can only really respond to things and respond to your environment and be thoughtful about how you're going to respond. And it's that response that dictates your disposition and your peace that you have, to touch back on peace. And that is how you flow through life to work towards the things that you're looking for without this disruption or this stress or strain that isn't needed at all.
Mm-hmm. And I freaking love that parable. And then the last parable is the one of the Mexican fisherman. So have you heard that one? The Mexican fisherman. So you have this Mexican fisherman that's working out on this coastal town, and this American businessman comes in and he goes, "Man, this is the best fish ever." He goes, "What do you spend your time doing outside of fishing?" And he goes, "Well, I eat, I sleep, I dance with my wife, and we have so much fun." And he goes, "Oh my goodness." He's like, "Well, man, you need to make an enterprise out of this. You need to make a giant company out of it." And he goes, "You can create all these factories, and then I can make you rich, and we can go into America, and we can build up all these distilleries and all these canneries." And he goes, "Oh, okay, cool." And he goes, "And then I'm rich." He goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, what would I do then?" And he goes, "Well, at that point," he's like, "you can eat, sleep, dance with your wife, and sleep and like hang out." And he goes, "Okay, cool. So I'm doing that now." And it made me think of, I had that real life version of that. So I was in Norway on a Tuesday. I was sitting watching the sunset, and Norway's like 7-8 hours ahead of US. So Tuesday sunset in Norway is like smack in the middle of the workday in America. And so I was getting emails, texts, calls for my business. But I was just like, I'm going to go sit and watch the sunset. And I sat there and I just sat on a bench and I watched the sunset in Norway for 2 hours. Just watch the sunset. And I thought, man, one day I'm going to build my company up to where I've got all of these hundreds and hundreds of people working for me. And we're going to make millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars. And I'm going to have a C-suite. Eventually, I'm going to hire a CEO that runs the company so that I can be removed from it, all the way back to where I can be able to have the freedom to have a Tuesday to where I can just sit here and watch a sunset in Norway. And I was like, so I'm already there. So it's just funny when you think about things like that.
Yeah.
Like, you kind of already are there.
Yeah.
There's no there to get to. It doesn't exist. So it's the getting to the there that is life.
100%. All right, to wrap up the show, Brian, what do you think is the most important question that people should ask themselves to get to where they're trying to go? Touching on the questions are the answer.
What if everything worked out better than I ever imagined?
I like that. I like that. Mine is, who do I need to become to get the things that I'm working for? Like, back to that identity. Who do I need to become? And like, what are my daily operations, and how do I think about those things to be the person before I actually attain those things? All right.
What do you think is the worst advice?
Oh my gosh, the worst advice? I can rattle off two off the top of my head. This is a good way to wrap up the show. One is, never pay for something that you can do yourself. And the reason that's the worst advice is because then you end up investing your time doing the lowest value item. It's like, oh, don't pay someone to mow the lawn when you can mow it yourself. Okay, now your time's stuck mowing the lawn or fixing the faucet or whatever it is, and you are shackled to the lowest ROI effort. The second worst piece of advice that I've ever received is that partnerships are a terrible idea. Because to build anything significant, you need partnerships. You need right relationships with others. Otherwise, you won't be able to generate enough value. You don't have enough lives to become an expert in everything that you need to build something significant. What's your worst piece of advice?
Worst piece of advice I probably ever received would be that the mountaintop is worth it. Never is. Mountaintop moments are fleeting. And when you get to the top of the mountaintop, you'll realize that you're at an infinite mountain range with higher and higher peaks. And so you get to the mountaintop, and the only thing that you do is you look around, you see the view, and you go, oh, wow. I'm the smallest peak. And you're just going to continue climbing mountains for the rest of your life. So now the best advice on that is, instead of living for the peaks, is like live for the climb. So that's 90%, like 98%. So it's like I think we did like 14 hours to climb a 14er in Colorado. And when we got to the top, we were up there for like 5 minutes, 6 minutes, because it was super windy. Like the wind's going crazy. It's really uncomfortable to be up there. And so I was like, 6 minutes versus 14 hours. That's life. Like we live for those moments, those mountaintop moments that are like 6 minutes, and we dread the rest of life getting to that moment. So I'm like, dude, you're enjoying like 2% of your life. You need to flip-flop it, enjoy the 98%.
Yeah.
So where can people find you?
On socials, Gideon Spencer _. So GIDEON SPENCER _. That's on Instagram. And
Perfect.
then,
If you guys want to reach me, you can find me at Brian Luebben, my first name, last name. No, man, this has been a blast. I hope everyone enjoyed. Like and subscribe to whatever podcast, whatever YouTube channel that we're posting this to. And go be better today. 1% more than you were yesterday.
that's it.
So, yeah.
Peace.
Peace.